I never thought I'd see the day when I'd have to cancel my son's birthday cake. But here I was, standing in the bakery with a sinking heart and empty pockets. Alice Mitchell glanced at the cake display, the colorful icing a reminder of how much her 6-year-old son, Jamie, deserved to have the best birthday ever. But as she checked the numbers in her wallet for the third time, she knew there was no way she could afford it. Her fingers hovered over the bakery counter, almost touching the cake, as if she could make it happen with sheer willpower. "I'm sorry, but I'll have to cancel," Alice said softly to the clerk, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. She felt the weight of disappointment settle in her chest, a deep ache that had nothing to do with the missed cake. It was the reality of being a single mom with bills piling up, working 2 jobs just to get by. As she walked away, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her sister, reminding her about the party supplies Jamie was looking forward to. Alice rubbed her eyes, fighting back tears. She didn't want Jamie to see her struggle, but sometimes the weight of it all was too much to hide. Just as she stepped out of the bakery, she collided with someone, a man, tall and impeccably dressed. He glanced down at her with sharp blue eyes, concern flashing for a moment before he straightened. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Alice nodded quickly, feeling embarrassed. "I'm fine, just dealing with some things." The man seemed to hesitate, then glanced at the bakery, where the cake was still sitting untouched. "It's a shame to see a cake like that go to waste," he said thoughtfully. Alice looked up, confused. "Excuse me." The man smiled, his expression warm but unreadable. "You should take it. For your son's birthday." Alice shook her head, unwilling to accept charity. "I can't afford it," she mumbled. I'm doing the best I can." The man's smile didn't falter. "What if I told you I could help with that?" he asked, his voice firm yet gentle. Alice stared at him for a long moment, unsure of what to say. She had never been good at accepting help from others, especially strangers. But something in his tone, in the way he was looking at her, made her pause. He stepped closer, pulling out a card from his wallet. "Let me help you." No strings attached. It was then that Alice realized who this man was. Ethan Carter, the billionaire CEO of Carter Enterprises. She had heard his name in the news, but never expected to meet him like this. But in that moment, standing outside the bakery, she couldn't bring herself to say no. And just like that, her life, and Jamie's birthday, would never be the same. Alice stood there for a moment, holding Ethan's business card in her hand, unsure of how to react. The card was heavy in her palm, embossed with the name Ethan Carter and the sleek logo of Carter Enterprises. She glanced up at him, still processing what had just happened. Ethan was looking at her, waiting, as if he was certain she would say yes. "I can't accept this," Alice said quietly, her voice trembling. "I don't know you. I can't take your money." Ethan's expression softened, his gaze steady but warm. "I'm not offering money, Alice. I'm offering a solution," he said, his voice calm but firm. Alice's heart raced as she swallowed hard. She didn't know how to explain the crushing weight of her pride. She had spent so many years doing everything on her own, refusing to rely on anyone. But here, in front of her, was a man who could make everything better with a few simple words. "I'm not asking for anything in return. I just want to help," Ethan continued. His words were like a balm to her, but they also stirred up something deep inside her. A part of her wanted to reach out and accept, to let herself be helped for once. But another part of her, the part that had struggled through so many hard days, the part that had fought for every small victory, couldn't bear the thought of taking charity. She shook her head, taking a step back. "I don't know how to accept something like this," she said, feeling embarrassed. "I've always made my own way." Ethan's eyes never left hers. "Alice, you're doing the best you can. You're doing what any mother would do for her child. There's no shame in accepting help when you need it. You deserve this, and your son deserves this." The words hit Alice harder than she expected. She glanced down at the business card again, feeling a wave of emotion rising in her chest. She thought about Jamie, his excited face when she told him they would have a birthday party, his laughter as he ran around the house, imagining how his day would go. And she thought about how, despite everything, she would do anything to give him the life he deserved. "I'll take it," Alice said quietly, almost to herself. Ethan smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting just enough to show a genuine warmth. "I'm glad," he said simply. "You don't have to worry about the cake or anything else. I'll make sure it's taken care of." Alice nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over her. She wasn't sure where this would lead, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like there was a glimmer of hope in her life. Ethan turned to leave, his steps measured, but then he paused and looked back over his shoulder. "You're a good mother, Alice," he said quietly. "Don't forget that." With those words, he walked away, leaving Alice standing there, the weight of the card in her hand now feeling like a promise, one she wasn't sure she was ready to accept but couldn't ignore. She took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, as if for the first time seeing the possibility of something better on the horizon. Alice arrived home that evening, still clutching Ethan's business card in her hand. She hadn't told Jamie about the birthday cake yet, not wanting to get his hopes up. She didn't want to promise something she wasn't sure she could deliver. But as she opened the door to their small apartment, the smell of Jamie's favorite mac and cheese filled the air, and she couldn't help but smile. Jamie was sitting at the table, his big blue eyes bright with excitement. "Mom, can we make cupcakes for my birthday tomorrow?" he asked eagerly, already bouncing in his seat. Alice's heart clenched at the sight of his hopeful face. He didn't deserve the stress she was putting herself through. "I think we can manage some cupcakes, buddy," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. She went to the kitchen and started preparing dinner, feeling the weight of everything pressing on her shoulders. Just as she was about to set the table, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. She hesitated for a moment before opening it. It was Ethan. "Hi, Alice. I just wanted to check in and see if everything is good for tomorrow. Let me know if you need anything else." Alice stared at the message for a moment, feeling a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She had never been one to accept help from anyone, especially not from someone like Ethan. But he had made it clear that he wanted to help, and now she was starting to feel the weight of his kindness. She typed a quick reply. "Thanks, Ethan. I really appreciate it, but I'm sure we'll be okay." She hit send and put the phone down, but a knot remained in her stomach. Just then, Jamie ran into the kitchen, his arms outstretched. "Mom, guess what? I just made a card for my birthday. I'm going to put it on the table so everyone can see." His face lit up with pure joy. Alice's heart melted. She knew she couldn't disappoint him. She couldn't let him see her struggle anymore. The next morning, Alice woke up early to start the preparations for Jamie's birthday. She didn't want him to know that there had been a time when she thought he might not have a cake at all. She decorated the small dining table with streamers and balloons, all the while trying to shake off the doubt that lingered in her mind. By the time the clock struck noon, the doorbell rang. Alice opened it to find a delivery driver standing there with a large box. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the name on the package, Carter Enterprises. The delivery driver handed her the box with a friendly smile and left without a word. Alice stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. She carefully opened the box, and there, nestled inside, was the most beautiful birthday cake she had ever seen. It was decorated with bright colors, a giant number 6 on top, and the words "Happy Birthday, Jamie" written in swirled icing. Alice felt her breath catch in her throat. She had never imagined that Ethan would go this far to help her. She quickly carried the cake to the table, setting it down in front of Jamie, who gasped in amazement. "Wow, Mom, this is the best cake ever," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. Alice smiled, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to fall. She couldn't believe it. For once, everything was going to be okay. She took a deep breath and joined Jamie at the table, knowing that this moment was the one she had been fighting for all along. Alice sat at the table, watching Jamie as he eagerly devoured his cake, his little hands covered in icing. The smile on his face was everything she had hoped for. It was the first time in a long while that Alice felt like she could breathe, like everything was finally falling into place. She glanced over at the cake again, still in disbelief that it was there, that Ethan had actually made it happen. She had barely slept the night before, too busy with the flurry of emotions that came with accepting his help. She had spent the entire night wondering why he'd done it, why a man like him, someone who could easily walk away from someone like her, had decided to step in and make a difference. "Mom, can we play with the balloons now?" Jamie asked, snapping Alice out of her thoughts. She smiled, nodding as she stood up to grab one. As she handed it to him, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She walked over to check the message, half expecting it to be a reminder about the bills she still needed to pay, or a work email demanding her attention. But when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. It was from Ethan. I hope you and Jamie are enjoying the cake. If you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask. I'd love to meet him sometime. Alice's fingers hovered over the screen. Part of her wanted to thank him, to explain how much his gesture meant to her. But another part of her felt uncomfortable. She wasn't used to being so vulnerable, so open with a stranger. She had worked so hard to build walls around herself, to never let anyone in. Ethan's message, however, made it feel like those walls were crumbling, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. After a long pause, Alice typed back, "Thank you again. For everything. We're really enjoying the cake. I don't know what else to say, except that I'm truly grateful." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. It only took a few moments before his reply came through. "You're welcome, Alice. It's the least I could do. I'll reach out soon to arrange a time to meet Jamie." Alice stared at the message, the weight of it sinking in. She hadn't expected him to want to meet Jamie. She hadn't expected any of this. She had never imagined that one simple act of kindness would lead to this. A part of her was excited at the thought of Jamie meeting Ethan, of seeing how he might fit into their lives. But another part of her, the part that had always kept her guarded, was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if she let him in, if she allowed herself to hope for more than what she already had. As the evening wore on, Alice couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's message. She tried to focus on Jamie, on the birthday party they had managed to put together with so little, but her mind kept drifting back to him. Who was this man, really? And why had he decided to help her? She knew she had to figure it out, but for now, all she could do was enjoy the moment with Jamie, the one person who always kept her grounded. Jamie's laughter filled the room as he played with the balloons, his energy infectious. Alice watched him, a small smile tugging at her lips. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change for the better. Alice woke up the next morning with a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. The sunlight was streaming through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. She looked over at Jamie, who was still asleep in his bed, his face relaxed in a dreamless slumber. It was moments like these that made all the struggles worth it. The night before had been a whirlwind of laughter and joy, a stark contrast to the loneliness she had grown used to. She had even allowed herself to enjoy the moment, without the usual nagging worry about how she would make ends meet or whether she was doing enough for Jamie. As she sat down at the kitchen table, her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Ethan. "Good morning, Alice. I hope you and Jamie had a great time last night. I'd love to meet him soon, whenever you feel ready." Alice stared at the message for a moment, feeling her heart flutter. It had been only a few days since Ethan had stepped into her life, and already, things felt so different. But as much as she appreciated his kindness, there was a part of her that still couldn't quite shake the feeling that this was all too good to be true. She had spent so long convincing herself that she didn't need anyone, that she could handle everything on her own. Now, here was this stranger, this billionaire CEO, offering his help, his time, and his friendship. Alice hesitated before typing a reply. She had spent years building walls around herself, convinced that relying on others would only lead to disappointment. But something about Ethan felt different. His kindness wasn't a transaction, it was genuine. She took a deep breath and typed back, "Thank you, Ethan. I think Jamie would love to meet you. How about next week?" She hit send before she could second-guess herself. A moment later, Ethan replied, "That sounds perfect. I'll arrange something. Looking forward to it." Alice smiled at the screen, her mind racing with questions. She didn't know what to expect from this meeting, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but maybe, just maybe, she was ready to see where it would take her. As the day went on, Alice busied herself with the usual routine, grocery shopping, cleaning, and making sure Jamie was ready for school. But every now and then, her thoughts would drift back to Ethan. What did he really want from her? Was this all just some act of charity, or was there something more? She pushed the thoughts aside, determined not to let herself get lost in doubt. Instead, she focused on the one thing that mattered most, Jamie. He was her world, her reason for everything. As evening fell, she sat down with him to dinner, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. Jamie looked up at her with a wide grin. "Mom, can we do something fun this weekend?" he asked. Alice's heart swelled with love. "Of course, buddy. We'll make it a special weekend." For the first time in a long time, Alice allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change for the better. Alice had spent the entire week thinking about the meeting with Ethan. She couldn't quite pinpoint why, but the anticipation was growing inside her. It wasn't just about meeting a billionaire CEO, it was about what Ethan represented. He was someone who had shown up at the perfect moment, offering kindness when she felt like there was no one to turn to. She felt conflicted, torn between her usual reluctance to trust others and the undeniable warmth Ethan had shown. As the weekend approached, Jamie was buzzing with excitement about the meeting. He kept talking about how cool it would be to meet someone like Ethan, someone who had so much power, as Jamie put it. Alice, however, still felt the weight of her doubts. She had lived her entire life with the belief that if she worked hard enough, she could do everything on her own. Now, here she was, allowing someone else into their small world. She tried to focus on Jamie's enthusiasm. After all, this meeting was as much for him as it was for her. On the day of the meeting, Alice spent the morning making sure everything was in order. She picked out her nicest outfit. Nothing too fancy, just something that would make her feel presentable. She looked in the mirror and tried to steady her nerves. She was a mother, she reminded herself, and she had been through so much already. This wasn't about Ethan or his wealth, it was about her son. Jamie, dressed in his favorite blue shirt, bounded around the apartment, excited for what the day would bring. "Are we going to see Mr. Ethan today, Mom?" he asked, his face lighting up with curiosity. "Yes, we are," Alice replied, smiling at him. "Are you ready to meet him?" Jamie nodded enthusiastically, his eyes wide with excitement. "I hope he's as nice as you said," he said, his voice full of innocent wonder. "He is," Alice replied softly. "He really is." When they arrived at the cafe where they were meeting Ethan, Alice could feel the tension in her shoulders. She had been in situations like this before, where she felt like an outsider, unsure of how to fit in. But when she saw Ethan standing by the entrance, his calm demeanor and genuine smile made her feel at ease. Ethan greeted them warmly. "Alice, Jamie, it's great to finally meet you both," he said, extending his hand to Alice first, and then ruffling Jamie's hair. "You've got a great kid here, Alice," Ethan said, his voice sincere. Alice felt a strange warmth spread through her. She wasn't sure if it was because of his words or because for once, she felt like someone saw her for who she was, a good mother, doing her best for her son. They sat down at a corner table, and the conversation flowed naturally. Ethan asked Jamie about school, his favorite subjects, and his hobbies. Alice watched as Jamie's initial shyness melted away, his face lighting up with enthusiasm as he talked about his love for drawing and building things with Legos. It was clear that Jamie felt comfortable with Ethan, and that made Alice feel both relieved and nervous at the same time. She realized that the more she saw Ethan interact with Jamie, the more she liked him, not because of his wealth or status, but because he genuinely cared. He was kind, thoughtful, and listened intently to everything Jamie had to say. For the first time in a long while, Alice allowed herself to relax and enjoy the moment. She didn't know where this would lead, but as she looked at Jamie's smiling face, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to trust again. Alice couldn't stop thinking about the meeting with Ethan. The way he had interacted with Jamie, the kindness he had shown, it was something she wasn't used to. She had spent so much of her life trying to protect herself and Jamie from the disappointments of others. But there was something about Ethan that made her question everything. That evening, after Jamie had gone to bed, Alice sat on the couch, her thoughts swirling. She had promised herself that she wouldn't let anyone into their lives unless they truly deserved to be there. But now, Ethan had somehow found a way to break through the walls she had so carefully built. She glanced at her phone, half expecting another message from him, but there was nothing. Maybe he wasn't as interested as he seemed, she thought. Maybe he was just being kind out of some sense of obligation. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more. Just as she was about to put her phone down, it buzzed. Ethan's name appeared on the screen. "Alice, I hope you and Jamie are doing well. I just wanted to check in and see how you're both doing. Let me know if you need anything." Alice felt a rush of emotions. She hadn't expected to hear from him so soon, and the message felt different than the others. It wasn't just a courtesy check-in, it felt personal. She quickly typed a reply. "Thanks, Ethan. We're doing well. I appreciate you checking in. Jamie had a great time meeting you, and he hasn't stopped talking about it." She hit send and waited, her heart racing. The response came almost immediately. "I'm glad to hear that. I really enjoyed meeting him too. It's rare to meet someone as genuine as you and Jamie. I'd like to help if I can, and I'd love to get to know both of you better. Alice sat back, staring at the screen. There it was again, his sincerity. It wasn't just about helping with a cake or a gift. He was offering something more, something deeper. But was she ready for that? Was she ready to open up and trust again? She wasn't sure. She had spent so much of her life taking care of herself and Jamie that the idea of allowing someone else in felt foreign. Yet, there was a part of her that wanted to believe in the possibility of something better, something real. She put the phone down and took a deep breath. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Jamie. She couldn't keep him isolated from the world, no matter how afraid she was of getting hurt. She had to trust that maybe, just maybe, Ethan was someone who would make their lives better. The next day, Alice woke up with a sense of resolve. She was going to take a chance, not just for herself, but for Jamie. Maybe it wouldn't be easy. Maybe it would be messy. But she was tired of living in fear. She was ready to see where this unexpected connection might lead. Alice woke up the next morning feeling a sense of determination. The night before, she had taken a step toward letting someone into her life, and now, she was going to take the next step. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't as afraid. The thought of allowing Ethan into their world felt like a small, but significant breakthrough. She had spent so many years trying to protect herself and Jamie from the disappointments of others, but maybe, just maybe, Ethan wasn't someone to be afraid of. Jamie was already up, his energy as infectious as ever. "Mom, when are we going to see Mr. Ethan again?" he asked, bouncing on the couch with excitement. Alice smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had never seen Jamie so excited to meet someone outside of their little circle. "Soon, buddy. I'll let you know when we have a plan," she replied. Jamie grinned, clearly thrilled by the idea of seeing Ethan again. Alice's phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Ethan. "Hi, Alice. I was thinking it might be nice to spend some time together this weekend. I know it's short notice, but maybe we could all have lunch? Let me know what works for you." Alice stared at the message, her heart racing. She had known this would happen. Ethan would want to take their relationship to the next level. But the idea of meeting him outside of their brief encounters, of letting him into their world, felt like a big step. She didn't want to rush anything, but she also didn't want to overthink it. Taking a deep breath, she typed back, "That sounds nice, Ethan. We'd love to join you for lunch. How about Saturday?" She hit send, then sat back, the weight of her decision settling in. The idea of seeing Ethan again felt different this time, like it wasn't just about gratitude or obligation. It was about connection. Alice hadn't felt that kind of connection with someone in a long time. She wasn't sure what it meant yet, but she was willing to explore it. The next few days passed in a blur of activity as Alice prepared for the lunch with Ethan. She tried to keep her mind focused on Jamie, making sure he was ready for school, taking care of everything at home. But her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan. What would he be like outside of their brief interactions? Was he truly as kind and genuine as he appeared? On Saturday, they arrived at the restaurant early, and Alice felt a familiar flutter of nerves. She couldn't help but wonder if she was making the right choice. But as soon as she saw Ethan, waiting at a table near the window, that feeling began to fade. He stood up as they approached, his smile wide and sincere. "Alice, Jamie, it's so good to see you both again," he said, his voice warm. Alice smiled, feeling a little more at ease. This was just lunch, just a chance to spend time together. There was no need to complicate it. "Thanks for inviting us, Ethan," Alice said. "We're glad to be here." They sat down and began talking, and for the first time, Alice realized how easy it was to be around him. He asked about Jamie's school, about her work, about the little things that made up their lives. It was clear that he wasn't just interested in her, but in Jamie as well. As the conversation flowed naturally, Alice felt something inside her shift. Maybe she wasn't so afraid anymore. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to see where this could go. Alice couldn't believe how smoothly everything was going. The lunch with Ethan had been surprisingly easy. She had expected awkward silences or unnecessary tension, but instead, they talked like they had known each other for years. Ethan asked about her work, her hopes, and dreams for Jamie, and with every passing minute, Alice found herself more comfortable in his presence. As the meal went on, Jamie continued to entertain them with stories about school and his latest art projects. Ethan seemed genuinely interested, laughing and engaging with Jamie as though he were just another friend. For a moment, Alice had to remind herself that this was Ethan Carter, someone with a world of influence, someone who didn't need to give his time to her or Jamie. And yet, he was here, asking about their lives, sharing stories of his own childhood, and making Jamie laugh. Alice caught herself smiling more than she had in weeks. She hadn't realized how much she had. Missed the ease of just being around someone who cared, someone who didn't see her as a project or an obligation. They finished the meal, and Ethan suggested they take a walk in the nearby park. The afternoon was beautiful, the sun just starting to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow on everything. They strolled along the path, the conversation flowing effortlessly. Alice could feel the weight of her doubts lifting with each step. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the connection they were building. By the time they reached the park bench, Jamie was running ahead, chasing after a butterfly. Alice sat down, feeling a quiet sense of peace. "I know this is all new, Alice," Ethan said, his voice steady and thoughtful. "And I understand if you're not sure about me or what I want. But I hope you can see that I'm not here for anything other than to get to know you both." Alice looked at him, taking in the sincerity in his eyes. She had been so afraid of letting someone into their lives, of letting her guard down. But now, sitting here with Ethan, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to trust again. She took a deep breath, feeling the last of her reservations fade away. "I think I'm ready, Ethan," she said softly. "I think I'm ready to see where this goes." Ethan smiled, a look of relief crossing his face. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching Jamie play in the distance, a sense of peace settling over them. Alice couldn't predict the future, and she wasn't sure what it held. But for the first time in a long time, she was open to the possibilities, ready to see what would come next.